Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton. You and I both know that strong communication skills are vital for success in business. They impact our management, our teamwork, our customer service, and yes, our profits. So that's why every week I, the Biz Communication Guy, bring you the Biz Communication Show with a recognized communication expert to share their expertise with us. Today, I'm delighted to bring a guest that I've known for over a decade. His name is Matthew Lampros, based in the Salt Lake City area. He's going to talk about a topic which most of us even run away from, and that's the topic of cold calling. He is truly a cold calling authority. He's had tons of success teaching salespeople how to get that first appointment through sales calls. He's coached over 750 sales representatives. His company is titled Selling Mental, which is a combination of selling and mental. And believe me, he has succeeded in sales throughout his entire career. So join me now as we welcome Matthew Lampros. Welcome, Matthew.
Oh, well, what a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
And I didn't cold call you. Okay, this is a topic which so many of us really lack the know-how on. You've got the know-how, so we need to hear from you. Let's open, Matthew, with this question, which I want you to respond to, please. Why is it so many of us fear cold calling?
That's a good question. It's a deep answer, but the simple answer is that it doesn't work. Most people, the way that they do it, it doesn't work. And in addition to that, when you start to figure it out a little bit, sales is an interesting game because like anything, particularly like a technology, your cell phone or something, it changes over the years. So what was effective 30, 40 years ago in selling, nobody would question you couldn't use those practices anymore and be effective. Cold calling is much the same way. So it's not fun to do generally because A, it's hard to figure out, and B, when you do figure it out, it's not a lifetime skill. It's something you have to update and change because what works changes.
Well, one of the main factors in my judgment and my experience is that we fear cold calling because we're so afraid of rejection.
Yeah, and if you're a salesperson, you're a little more used to it. If you're a business owner, you have a baby, which is your business, and you're excited to want to talk about it, and to have people not want to talk to you about it is hard. But as we get into this conversation, I'll clarify what's happening. You're not actually being rejected for your idea or for what you're trying to sell or talk about. There's something entirely different going on, and we'll get a chance to talk about that and maybe help you with that feeling.
How was it that you became skilled at cold calling? How did you learn it?
Very good question. Like anybody, it's a necessity of life. When we started the business some 14 years ago, our efforts were mainly focused on helping companies bring new products to market. So if you had something that you had never sold before, you'd give it to us and we'd take it for 3 or 4 or 5 months, and we'd figure out what are the processes and steps that you need to go through to turn this into a cookie cutter system for selling that particular product. And what we discovered was the first and most difficult step was having the initial conversation. And so we spent an enormous amount of time and energy figuring out how to do that. And eventually that became what everyone wanted to know from us. How do you get that first meeting? They were less concerned, and there are certainly lots of experts in sales out there that could help them with a number of things. But what we tend to focus on is how to get that first meeting because of what we think we've figured out to do that.
And from what I've read on your LinkedIn page, which I encourage everybody to visit, on your LinkedIn page, you cite an enormously high percentage of success that those who go through your training experience in their cold calling, the success that they have in getting appointments. Tell us those percentages, please.
Yeah. So first of all, it's not easy. Learning this is a way of thinking differently. We call it cold calling coaching for closers. If you're already a closer, you already know how to. If someone you can meet with someone, you can turn that into business. We will then teach you how to get more meetings, but it's difficult. So if someone will go through the process with us and take the training, and we do actually coaching where we get on the phone with them and do one-on-one, they're calling, we're listening in, we're guiding, sort of like a golf pro sitting behind you telling you, turn your elbow or keep your eye on the ball or quit bending your knees. And so we're doing that on every call, but they go through that. The worst they'll do is 4 new meetings an hour. So every hour they're calling, they're getting 4 new meetings, but our percentages are what we call a pickup rate and a yes rate. And so your pickup rate is the percent of people that pick up the phone and talk to you, not the front desk, not the assistant, not the voicemail. And that should be 20-25%. And the percent of people that will agree to a meeting should be 80%. So you get, it's not rejection anymore when a quarter of the people pick up and almost everybody will agree to a meeting. It's just figuring out how to do it in a way that is different than the way you're doing it now.
What are some of the key points, Matthew, that you bring out to those who go through your training, the salespeople who want to learn cold calling? What would be some of the key factors that you would make sure you got across to them?
Yeah, that's good. So we focus on those 2 things. We focus on the pickup rate and the yes rate. And the 2 factors that influence the pickup rate the most, whether I can get the person to pick up the phone and actually take my call and talk to me, has to do with 1, the day and the time that you call, which is crazy, but there are times and days where it's really bad to call and times and days that are really great to call. And the other is handling the front desk. A lot of people will call someone directly. And if you call someone directly, our phone calls tend to be screened. If you call the front desk, you have to deal with the front desk, which we can help you through. But when the front desk patches them through to the person, the pickup rate is 300% higher than if you call them directly. So it's calling at the right day and time and calling the front desk and learning how to manage the front desk instead of calling the person directly.
We call that front desk, we have for years, the gatekeeper.
Gatekeeper.
and
Right.
in essence, they really are. I guess I'd go on to say, how do you get through this business of voicemail and caller ID? Those, to me, would be 2 of the biggest obstacles that a cold caller would face.
Well, here's I'll put your question back. You don't have to answer, but just think about this question, and then I'll give you an answer. If the person you're calling got a call from the principal of their student's school, would they take it? Would they take a call from the IRS, who they hate? Would they take a call from the dentist, who they hate? Would they take a call from a supplier or a customer or their boss or a vendor or a friend from college from years ago? People take phone calls. It's caller ID and voicemail aren't used to not take phone calls. Business happens on the phone a lot. It's that you're coming in at a time when they don't want to be talked to, a time when they're busy, and you're proposing they talk about something that they're not interested in. And that combination causes them to reject you. But people love to talk to other people on the phone, and people love to improve their careers and their businesses. And you have a product that if you believe in, like you, Bill, that can really help people. And if you believe that, then people ought to listen to you about it. It's just that cold calling is a very difficult way to get people to listen to you because you're interrupting them and you're talking about something that they don't want to talk about. I'll give you a quick example. You're driving in your car, you're a lovely person, and there's a person in front of you that is a lovely person, a good person, is a grandpa and gives their grandkids, carves of wood toys every year and hands out candy to the neighbors, and wonderful person. And you pull up next to them because you're trying to get around, and then something happens and you cut them off accidentally. This nice, wonderful person that you are just did this terrible thing and cut someone off. And this nice, wonderful grandpa that person is a wonderful person, gets very upset and is also all of a sudden not such a wonderful person. But you cut them off, and that happens. What's interesting about cold calling is the very same behavior. People treat us like we cut them off in traffic. And it's not because your product's no good. It's not because they don't want to hear from you. It's not because they're rejecting the premise of what you have to offer the world. It's because you cut them off in traffic. And if you tried to talk to whoever you cut off in traffic about your product at that moment, they're not going to listen to you, Bill. And the same thing's on the phone. So when you cut someone off in traffic, obviously, wave. Sorry. And instantly everything's fine. 99% of the time. Oh, okay. Oh, it's a mistake. I make mistakes too. They're fine. And then you could talk to them about your product. If you do the same thing on the cold call, you cold call, they pick up the phone. They have, you've heard the word hangry. I'm hungry and angry. I'm so hungry, I'm angry. I call it cangry. They're just very angry that you called them. And if you can address that right away, if you give them a little wave, the cold call changes instantly. So I just say, I know I'm interrupting. Apologize for the interruption. I realize I'm interrupting. I know you weren't expecting my call. In some way, if I could wave by addressing the fact that I interrupted them, all of a sudden that anger goes away and they're willing to listen to you. Now, there are other things that you have to do, but it's just little things like that really, really matter.
That's an excellent comparison. The thing too that I'd like to go back to, you referred a minute ago to there are good days to call, there are good times to call, and there are times that don't work. And of course, the first one that comes to my mind is calling somebody on Monday morning when they're trying to get their week going, get their mind in gear, organize their workplace, get their people assigned. It would seem to me, what's your opinion about, is Monday morning a no time to call people?
It depends on the industry you're calling. So you would never call hotels on mornings because they have checkouts going on. You have to be very careful depending on the kind of client you have now. A lot of my clients do things like heating and air conditioning, electrical work. They're dealing with somebody that comes in at 6 a.m. So if you're calling them Monday morning, 8 or 9 our time, that's the middle of their day, so it's very tough. But we've been doing this for 13, 14 years now, and I keep track when we have 3 coaches, and when we do coaching, we have a little score sheet like you do in baseball, where you're marking each thing that happens. And we've been able to compile all that data by industry, and it's very, very clear, Bill, that depending on the industry you call, there are very specific times to call and very specific times to not call. And depending on the industry you're calling and the industry you're in, there are very clear cut times. So Monday morning can be a brilliant time to call as long as it's early in their morning when they come in, and you're following some processes which include waving when you cut them off in traffic and getting to the point quickly. But it can be a very bad time to call if it's an industry where that's not good for them.
I've heard that some people have success calling after normal working hours because many executives will stick around to wind up the day, or write reports, or read what has come to them, plan for the next day. The rest of the staff isn't there, so you might get them directly if you called in. Is that the case?
Yeah. So this is the thing about cold calling. I call it digging with the wrong end of the shovel. Prospecting is a really interesting game because, in my opinion, people have turned the shovel around and they're trying to dig a ditch and they're using the pole and the handle. And so I run into all these companies have these really brilliant systems where they've got a whole lot of people that are getting the dirt wet, and a whole big bunch of people that have developed these special buckets that work with the handle of the shovel and like this special chemical that dissolves dirt, when all they need to do is turn the handle around and use the shovel instead of the handle. Because cold calling is so hard, the industry has tended to head far away from it, from the right solution. And I just say, come back. So there are tricks. You could call late. You could, stop off in person. You can send cartoons and warm the call up. But if you're really fishing with a net and you want to get as many as possible, I just follow a system. I call on the right day and the time. I handle the front desk, the gatekeeper accordingly, so they'll put me through. Gatekeepers are brilliantly good at passing people through as long as they don't feel like you're there to waste someone's time. But if they feel like you're going to waste the time, they're like a whole nother person. They'd stop you cold. So as long as you can convince them it's not a waste of time, they'll pass you through. If you get the person to pick up and you wave at them and follow a few other techniques, you don't need to use some of those tricks. Those tricks I call them tricks. They work, but they're just, you're not going to get nearly the volume of business that you would if you just kind of turn this into a manufacturing line. I don't know if that answer makes a lot of sense, but.
All your answers are making good sense, and I applaud the comparisons, the analogies that you're making, because they're clear, they're easy for us to understand, and we can get the points that you're making that way. I've found in my own experience, Matthew, and I wonder if this is included in your training, that our minds work in compartments to some extent. And I learned years ago, when I spent my 20 years in management, that if I had a writing assignment, or maybe 2 or 3 writing assignments, I would block out time and do that. And once I'd done the first writing assignment, I transitioned easily into the next one. I didn't go make phone calls. I didn't go to the next office and talk to somebody. And the same, I found, is the case with making telephone calls. As in anything that's potentially threatening, or we feel we might lose in it, the first step is the toughest. I always found if I had, and I was in professional fundraising, so I had to make many phone calls, getting appointments and reminding people of the charitable giving year end deadline. I had to do those things. And I always found that the second and the third call, and I didn't have any spiel, nothing memorized. It was just, you get into the flow. Is that what happens with the salespeople that you train?
Yes. It's interesting. There's definitely a flow, and there's definitely nerves. The hardest call you'll ever make is the first call, because it just takes so much to pick up the phone. And you make it worse if then you take 10 minutes to do some emails and talk to your friends about what happened to the weekend, go to the water cooler. It becomes easier and easier to make the next calls, as you pointed out. But furthermore, and maybe more importantly, those times that are good to call, we call them golden hours. Depending on your industry, the golden hours are different. But those times that are good to call are so good that you'd be crazy to do anything but call during them, because you get so many meetings. If you call during a golden hour, you should get a minimum of 4 meetings an hour. The record is 23 meetings an hour, 23 in 1 hour, by a guy at Johnson & Johnson. He has the record by far. But the average really, really good person who has a great day does 12 an hour. So 12 new meetings, that's 2 or 3 weeks of business that you can get in 1 hour of calling if you call during a golden hour. So when you start to realize, if I call during a golden hour, I'm getting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 meetings an hour. There's no reason for me to do something besides that. And if I call 2 hours later, 0 meetings, 1 meeting. It's crazy. So there's obviously there's the flow that you want to get into, where it's easy and comfortable to make calls. But that golden hour is so precious that you do almost anything to not call, to make sure that you're doing anything but calling during that, because it's where all your business comes from.
We have time for one final question. In your training of salespeople, how long a period do you work with a sales professional who comes to you and says, I need to learn cold calling? Is it a matter of a week or 2 weeks, or what's involved?
So we work until they can get 4 meetings an hour. And then we're a lifetime. So as long as the person's an employee at your company, they can work with us, and they'll set up maintenance calls. We do that because people get in slumps, or Thanksgiving comes around, or summer comes around, and things get slow. But it depends on the person. Some people can pick it up in 3 weeks. Some people pick it up in 2 or 3 months, and we'll do whatever it takes to get them to the point where they're getting four meetings an hour. But when you start to get things like waving at the car, when you start to realize that you're there, they're upset because you're interrupting them. They're not upset about your product. And if you can change that conversation, then you start getting a lot of meetings per hour, and it's pretty exciting. And that can take you a month, that can take you 2 weeks, it can take you 6 months.
You use the term pretty exciting. This has been a pretty exciting conversation. Matthew, believe me, I won't cold call you, but I will call you again for another conversation like this on the Biz Communication Show down the road in a couple of months, because you have so much in your experience that's valuable for us to learn from. Any closing comments to those of us who maybe have shied away from cold calling? We've picked up a lot of good strategies and tips from you. Any closing advice or comments?
Sure. Your product, what you do for a living, what you've chosen to do with your time, what you give up time with other things that might be more enjoyable to give to the world, it matters. And people should hear about it. And it's not something that should be rejected. It's not something that people will reject. You're just coming about it wrong. People don't like to be interrupted. People don't like to be sold. But people are happy to do business. People are happy to take a call. People are happy to have their lives and their careers and their companies advanced. And you can do that. So if cold calling is not working for you, try a few of the techniques we talked about. There's videos I have on YouTube that you can find out more. Give me a call and I can give you some more. But it's not your product. And it's not what you think. It's not that you're being rejected. It's just that it's hard and it's different than it used to be. And as you learn some of the techniques, people want to hear about your product. That's how they get better at what they do. So you're doing great, and you have a great thing to offer. Just feel confident about that when you call people.
You're not only a terrific coach, you're a wonderful cheerleader. You mentioned people calling you. Give us, please, your contact information that you would like to share so that
Sure.
we can have access to you, Matthew.
Sure. So it's Sellemental.com, which is SELLEMENTAL.com. So like elemental and cells, or 801-983-5900.
Thank you. Matthew, it has been very enlightening. And really, I think many people now, having heard your very fine comparisons and how you have succeeded in leading salespeople into successful cold calling, I think there are people who have heard our conversation who will know how to go about it. And I do encourage everyone to look at his YouTube videos, contact Matthew. If you are, as he said, proud of what you're doing, if you know it's necessary, if you know it's beneficial, then we shouldn't be quiet about it. I think that's the whole point Matthew is making, and he has provided a wonderful service equipping salespeople to get those vital first appointments. You can't get the second until you get the first. Since Matthew has given his contact information, I'm glad to share mine. Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is biz, that's B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go to my website, sign up for my online newsletter, also see the services that I provide, and my phone number is there. I would love to hear from you as well. Thanks very much for being with us on the video portion of the Biz Communication Show, and we welcome always those who hear us on podcast as well. Thanks again to Matthew Lampros. Thanks to all of you who joined us. Look forward to having you with us next week. I'm your host, Bill Lampton.